Flat painting began to make itself felt in the late 60s. Everyone was out to, well, you know what the 60s were like, you know, flat. And wall murals and that sort of thing. Super graphics, I think it was, sort of spinning off of op art and the like. But a lot of use of flat color, no doubt influenced by the pop artist. A number of artists in Houston were working this way. Trudy Sween, who did this painting, it's quite a large painting, got her degree at the at the University of Houston, or BFA. She was taught by Roland Brenier, who you saw earlier, Stella Sullivan, and was a student of Peter Gunther, the art historian. She's from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. She lived in both Florida and in New York. She went on to say that she was a founding board of the Cultural Arts Council International and Women's Year curator, among others, production designer for the award-winning movie The Trust, listed in Texas Archives and National Museum of Women in the Arts in Washington, D.C. We'll just ignore that. John O'Neill was named the director of the Rice University Art Department, I would say in I would say in the mid 1960s. He was asked to develop a department of faculty, and he hired Earl Staley and Bob Camblin, and later Joe Tate. None of these people got along with John O'Neill. I think that was not a problem for anyone who just knew that John O'Neill's character was one of these kinds of characters. He was a fine man. I knew him until just before he passed away. And these other gentlemen were fine gentlemen too, but their approaches and their directions just didn't work out. So they all ended up in leaving Rice to be replaced by other people. John O'Neill passed away probably 7 years ago, maybe 2003, 2004. He had graduated from the University of Oklahoma at Norman, and a number of his paintings are in buildings on campus at Rice University. Earl Staley joined the Rice faculty in 1966. He was from Illinois Wesleyan University, born in Chicago, and went to the University of Arkansas for his graduate degree, and Washington University in St. Louis had his first show. He taught printmaking and drawing to architects. He developed a studio program at St. Thomas University that I spoke of before in the late 60s. Joan Crystal at the Louisiana Gallery was his first dealer. This painting is from his first bit of painting done in 1969 that I was able to get. It's owned by Sandy Havens, retired university professor, Rice University professor. Earl Staley lives in Houston. Bob Camblin joins the Rice faculty in 1967, and after 1970 creates what is known as the Holding Company, which is a strange kind of artist bund, I guess you could say, an artist club, artist grouping. After probably, I think he was here probably 10 years through the 70s before he started his travels, first to Venice, California, then to Venice, Florida, then to Venice, Louisiana, where he still lives in Louisiana, not in Venice. He was a master draftsman and a master printer. This piece is from the 60s, and maybe just before he arrived in Houston in the late 60s. He joined the Reichsfederation in 67. Called Walpurgis Nacht. A drawing gives you an idea of some of his style of working, certainly very surrealist in feeling. Interesting to be followed by this piece by Harvey Johnson, a student of John Biggers at Texas Southern University, who is a poet. This work is from 1967. It's an early work by Harvey. It is titled A Time to Reap and a Time to Sow. And this is a quote from Harvey. This Conti drawing is about the temper of our times that tries men's souls, men who have become prisoners of a history of their own making, a burden, the strain of which our children can no longer seem to bear. Recently, two of Harvey's large murals for Texas Southern University were wantonly destroyed by the president of the university. That's true. Interesting to see how the forms flow from one to another, from the Harvey Johnson to this piece by Takiguchi. Masaru Takiguchi came to Houston in, what does it say? Well, it doesn't say here, but it was in the late 60s. He started showing right away at the Kiko Gallery. In fact, it may have been the Kiko Gallery that showed a lot of Asian art, particularly Japanese art, in Houston at this time. Kiko Gallery had taken the space on Lovett Boulevard that the Cushman Gallery had in the early '60s, and by the mid to late '60s, it was the Kiko Gallery run by Kiko Kung and David Kung, and they showed important art from Mexico and Latin America and important art from Asia. This was very important to see here in Houston. So Takiguchi showed there, and then for many years with Meredith Long Gallery, and now still with Hooks Epstein Gallery. This piece from the mid-60s is called Orbit, and it's made of Japanese camphor, so I suspect it might have been a piece that he brought with him when he came. Perhaps he brought the wood and made it, but it is Japanese camphor. I asked him the difference between Texas camphor wood and Japanese. He said Texas camphor wood's too wet, which means that you don't know what you're going to get into. On the inside you might find a hole, I guess. Graduating from St. Thomas and making a name for himself, graduating from St. Thomas and making a name for himself as a young painter in town, and then graduating later from the University of Houston, a graduate student and student of Pat Colville, James Boynton, and Earl Staley, is David Gray. This early piece by David Gray still shows, aside from good drawing of an action that was certainly very typical at the time in people's minds, someone who's smoking a joint and has a needle in his arm and this psychedelic kind of array around the head. Also at this time surfacing is Toby Topec, who went to Feather and Feather Art School here in Houston. That was a name from the past in the 50s. It was really kind of an interior design school. Studied with Lowell Collins, had a scholarship at the Museum of Fine Arts School. Worked briefly at the University of Houston with Bernhard Limmel. Studied art, architecture, and history in North Africa. Interested in archaeology in the Near East. This, a drawing from the period she had, also shows at the Jewish Community Center, and working with and taught life drawing and working with Robin Curtis, a woman who taught also at the Museum of Fine Arts School, junior school. Don Shaw came to Houston at this time, also in the late 60s. I think actually in '68 he was in Houston. This piece from 1968-69. Don Shaw was born in Boston. Moved to San Francisco in 1960 to Mexico in '65, to New York, then to San Francisco again, then to Mexico again, then back to Houston in '68, '69. Lives in Houston until probably '82 or '83, and then moved to Pine Bluff, Arkansas, and now lives in New Mexico. This a sculpture from the period. Particularly interesting surfacing at this time from the Texas Southern University is Kermit Oliver. This piece from the period, 1969, we believe it is from 1969, had his first major shows at the David Gallery starting in 1968-69, and one should note there's an excellent monograph published by the Museum of Fine Arts on the work of Kermit Oliver by Alvia Wardlaw. Kermit Oliver shows with the Hooks Epstein Gallery now. Lucas Johnson sort of was various places around the United States, and before he moving to Mexico City for a protracted period of time in the early '60s, meeting and marrying Patricia Covo-Dion, and got in touch with some people in Houston, had shows in the very late '60s at the David Gallery. This is a work from that period. I think particularly interesting to see this work and its sensibility and location, and this work by Kermit at the same time. There's a great, wonderful consciousness working between these two artists' work. There's an extraordinarily good book on the work of, actually, when he does his work, he's showing here, but he doesn't move here until the early '70s, like '71 or '72. There is an extraordinarily good book on the work of Lucas Johnson, Life and Art of Lucas Johnson, by Edmund Pillsbury and others, that was published about 5 years ago. Lucas died, I think, in the spring of 2004. A Texan from, I think, either Longview or Tyler, Joe Glasco, regularly had exhibitions in Houston at the Louisiana Gallery, and also was in major shows at the Museum of Fine Arts that had been put together by James Johnson Sweeney, and moves to Galveston in the early 1970s. Joe Glasco was an important presence in the Houston art scene at this time, by virtue of his work, not by virtue of his physical presence. This piece, which was titled Ariadne, a drawing typical of his figure work at that time, it was only much later, in the late '70s, that Joe Glasco's work became the kind of abstracted, formal situations that he became later known for. Harvey Bott also came to Houston, University of Southern California, went to NYU and Columbia, Art Center College, Los Angeles. He also went to the Kunstacademy in Dusseldorf. He moved to Galveston in 1960, and Harvey and his wife Margaret, who we all know as Dee Dee, moved to Houston. And by 1970, 1971, they were in Houston. He said it was only 50 miles away. Why took us so long to get there? But they had a good time and very successful work in Galveston, but showing in Houston. This essentially a piece, a valedictory piece from leaving Galveston, the paint cans on the floor of the studio where he worked and where he had his action. And finally, our own Forrest Prince, autodidact, showed with Diane David in the late 60s, this piece from the late 60s at the David Gallery. And it was Dorman David, Diane's brother, who discovered Forrest Prince's work. This piece is called Repent. It's from 1969. And I think to end this whole thing with knowing that the very next year, 1970, the Rothko Chapel would open, that this is a good time to end this reminiscence, and I want to thank all those people that made this possible. And let me see, the date today is what, October 27th?
No, 28.
28, 2010. Okay, there you go. Thank you very much.